Hello, everyone, and welcome to the My Formula Way channel. I'm Coach Ray right here in the sunroom, and I want to thank you so much for joining me on this journey. First time I'm ever doing a YouTube channel, so I really appreciate if you can subscribe and turn on your notifications for this channel so any of the content we release you get right away. And my goal and intention here is to have in-depth discussions with leaders in our community to talk about their life's journey, obstacles they face, challenges they've overcome, and how they strive to live their lives filled with strength in the body, peace in the mind, freedom in the spirit, and love in the heart, the My Formula Way. And I want to give a big shout out to Alex Silva. He's the person behind the scenes doing the video production and the first of this kind for him. So I really want to help and support him. You can check him out on Instagram at chino.mov. So I really hope you enjoy the content that you're going to be watching and listening to. And until we connect again, be healthy, be well, salute. So welcome everyone to the My Formula Way podcast. I'm Coach Ray, and once again, I have an amazing guest here. And I can't say enough about this person. This person's a friend of mine. This person has a story beyond stories, but she's so involved in the community. She's so involved in her causes and activism, what she does. Her name is Inaudy Esposito, and I'm so honored for her to be here. I'm so privileged for her to be here. She's the executive director of the Human Rights Commission in Orange County, New York. She's also a board member of Newburgh Ministry, Leadership Orange, and she supports organizations such as Fearless. And just having you here and to talk about your journey is just going to be such an exciting event for me.
Thank you, Ray. I am so excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you for this privilege and this honor to get to talk to you and your audience. I'm excited.
Oh, same here. So, talking about journeys, talking about health and wellness, we'll get to the health and wellness stuff later. But talking about your journey of where you grew up, born and raised, and what that journey was like coming here to New York and all the things that went on with that. What was that like for you?
Yeah. It's relevant for me more than it's ever been, to be honest with you. I've never been so in touch with my immigrant story in the past than I have now, because in my job now I get to share that story more often, and I get to, through my experience, help others understand the experience of an immigrant. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, or I should say I was born and there I was there till I was 7. But I have vivid memories between the ages of 5 and 7, remembering how my life started to change. And at a very young age, right? At 5 years old, you remember different things. But I remember missing my dad and knowing that he would travel, but that he was gone for long periods of time.
Okay.
And in the recent years, I've been able to fully ask more questions and kind of ask my parents, Papi, tell me when you came. Tell me more about, what brought you here and what did it take? And it was in these conversations, especially as my parents are aging, right? I have this different appreciation of them, which is amazing, right? And sad that we wait until our parents are aging to appreciate them as much as we do, right? Because it's like the clock is now ticking.
Yeah.
But I learned how my dad actually left my mom and my 4 siblings, I have 4 siblings, there's 5 of us, for a year. And for a year, he came to New York and he was living in one of my aunt's house in the Bronx, sleeping on the floor. He had 6 jobs at one point, and it was all to save money to get the visas for his 5 children and his wife, and for those who understand a little bit about immigration, that's not an easy process. That's a process that takes years. But this was the 80s where it was easier, where it was a little cheaper, and it was just a little easier. But even then it had its challenges. Sure. So he was gone a year. And then one day he comes home, and I remember this. I remember, I remember him bringing us Frosted Flakes. I will never forget the taste of Frosted Flakes. The first time I ever had American Frosted Flakes. I have to tell you, it is still something I enjoy.
Wow.
That brings me home. Frosted Flakes brings me home.
That's so awesome.
And then he was gone again. But this time he took my mom with him. This time it was both my parents, and I love my parents and everything they've done, the sacrifices and everything. But in those days, parents didn't talk to children how we talk to our kids now. Like my 6 and 9-year-old probably know way too much. They are explained things away. We overcompensate. Yeah. I don't think anybody ever sat us down and said, we'll be back. I'm going to come back for you. I don't remember that conversation. Maybe it happened, but it's not in my head. I just remember a hole. I remember just my siblings, just the day after day of where are my parents? And in those days, this was the 80s, right? There's no internet. There was no Skype or FaceTime or even international phone calls. That wasn't a thing, right? In the 90s, we got cards, international calling cards, right?
Exactly. You call for that? About 3 minutes. And
yes,
that's about it.
Yes, and that's it. That's all you get for $10.
Yeah.
So there was just this gap in my life and that of my siblings. And 6 months later, because this is how, a 6-year-old, because I was 6 in between my 6th and 7th birthday. I got on a plane with my brother. And so I was, again, between 6 and 7. And my 12-year-old sister, she's the one that was our guardian.
Wow.
For this trip. So by the way, my parents migrated to the United States, right? For a better life, for a better education, Absolutely. To give us all the opportunities they know they couldn't. My dad was a college graduate in my country, but couldn't find a job, right? Because he was on the wrong side of the politics back home. So he knew there was no opportunities coming. So we were left with my 19-year-old sister. She was the head of the household, right? So I'll always remember that she was my second mom for so long. But then we came to New York, and that was supposed to be to spend the summer here. By then, my dad had, again, after 6 jobs for over a year and a half at that point, saved up enough to get an apartment in Washington Heights, where, all Dominicans land when we first come, right? And he had his first apartment, and that was our first home. And I'll never forget my mother in front of us saying to my dad, my kids aren't going anywhere. Like, me and my little brother, she's like, they're not leaving. I'm not leaving them. And I remember the suffering. I remember the guilt, and I couldn't process that, right? But I remember feeling
of course.
So I can understand now the guilt she had of the sacrifice and what she needed to do to make sure that someday her children would have such an amazing future, and only the United States could give her that, Wow. But to get to that, she left her family, her parents, she left her siblings, she left everything she knew. Her land, her language, her customs, her everything, both of them. And slowly, they got all of my siblings. First, it was me and my little brother. So once again, I was separated from all my siblings because my, at that point, 12-year-old sister had to go back because, she was in the middle of school, and that was a little different, right? Harder. Her visa was about to expire, so she couldn't stay in the country. She had to go back home, and then my dad had to start all that process. And then in a course of maybe 5 or 6 years, we were whole again. My family was all together. I remember the conversations, hearing about the stuff of, getting the green card and how we had to go first because my older sisters at that point were over 18. So I remember all of this, not understanding it, but my father just, reiterating the importance of getting our documents and doing things, to the T and but still holding down 3 to 4 jobs, eventually having his own bodegas, my one of my first jobs ever. I must have been 10 or 11 years old, but I was running bodegas.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was, stocking those shelves and chasing the bodega cat. That is a real thing. We had bodega cats, and it was amazing.
And so you were there every day, probably, right?
Every day after school. Wow. I was picked up, and I went right there, did my homework there, and that's how I was raised. And then he had video stores. And in my teenage years, he went from bodegas to bodegas and video stores before Blockbuster shut us down.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'll never forget, my first crush was at a video store. It was one summer, here I am working, and this cute guy would just come in all the time. And turns out he wasn't there for the videos. So it worked out great. Yeah, just don't tell my parents that, though.
Yeah, no.
Please cut that out because, I had very strict Dominican parents. But throughout this whole time, my parents did everything for us. Everything. My mother, she learned trades, baking and sewing, and she would sell curtains that were amazingly beautiful and, duvet sets and all this. And it was set so she could work from home and still be, dinner was always ready when we got home. There were snacks, there was everything.
Yeah.
We never needed anything, and at home, not just my siblings, but our friends. We lived right next to the projects. Yeah. So from the Heights, we moved into the Bronx. Marble Hill, and we stayed in that area.
Yeah.
So that's where most of my childhood went, over in the Bailey Avenue area. And my friends, that's where we would hang out. It was just amazing, you know. My dad would come home, and in the summers, my cousins from Dominican Republic would actually come and spend the entire summer with us. So we'd all sleep like on the floor.
Yeah.
Like literally 6 of us would sleep on the floor. We'd put a lot of, it was amazing. It was the best summers ever.
It was the best time, right?
It was the best time because we were together, and I missed that. I didn't have cousins, you know. I had 2 cousins, but they were older than me. So my family was back home, you know. And then fast forward to high school, my parents, the year I was graduating from high school, said to me, we're going back home. You know, we built a new house. Like, my dad was saving. Any immigrant, they are working their butts off here, but they're saving and they're sending back, right?
Oh, okay.
They're maintaining their siblings, their parents, right? So whatever money we make here, we're going to multiply that because we have to raise our family and our family back home.
Yeah.
So they had built this house, and my dad said, you know, you've got 2 options. You can either stay here because now your older sisters are married. They've got a life here. One sister's in Rockland. You can, you know, figure it out here. Another one in Florida. Stay in the States. Or you can come home and I'll pay for college.
Okay.
I've always been a very smart kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, did you say free college?
Yeah,
I'm in.
Pay for it?
Are you paying for it? So I went back home at 18 and I got my bachelor's degree in Dominican Republic, educational psychology. I had an amazing experience because no matter how Dominican I thought I was a gringa back home.
Yeah, because
Please,
you
I was.
left and
Are you kidding me? I was a gringa back home.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was great to be home and to know what it's like to live home. And a part of me needed that.
Yeah.
And it was a really great experience. And I'm glad I was able to do it because my sisters all had their teenage years home. So they remembered all that, right? They had an experience of living with my grandparents. I never got that. I didn't have my grandparents with me.
Yeah.
I got 3 years of them. And that was it.
Oh, wow.
You know, so I missed out on so much. You know, I got time back with my cousins, with my aunts and my uncles, with my blood, you know, which just felt so good. And then when that was done, I came back home, right? Because I have 2 homes.
Yeah.
And I just pursued my goal of becoming a school counselor, which turns out was not what I wanted to do in life.
Wow, yeah.
You know,
But you tried it. You went for it. Yeah.
I did. I got my master's, so I took 1 year off.
Okay.
Partly because I missed the deadline for the application for grad school. But I applied for grad school as soon as I was back, and they accepted me to the following year. So I went to Hunter College in the city. Yeah. At this point, I was working for a telemarketing company where I met a really cute boy. And the second I walked into this room, I interrupted my boss. She was interviewing this guy. And the second I walked in, I'm like, who is this cute white boy? I knew I would marry him.
Wow, you knew right there.
Yep, 15 years later.
Wow.
That white boy is still mine. But yeah, I just, it was one thing after the other, you know. I worked hard for it all. But I kept positive. I kept, you know, I went from, I didn't have a lot of jobs. I had one job that I loved or that I hated, but made sure I loved it, or moved my way up the ladder by going, I knocked on my boss's door one day after 2 weeks at this telemarketing job saying, you need to pay me more and I need to be the supervisor. And she's like, who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
And I said, I just started working here 2 weeks ago, but this is what your supervisors are doing wrong. Which probably wasn't the smartest thing to do because I got that one fired. But it got me up the ladder, Ray. I was young. I learned a lot, but I've always been assertive. And if I want it, you know, i.e. the white boy, right? I'm going for it and I'm going to get it. And I found myself working for the Mental Health Association, where I was a rape crisis advocate.
And so that's when you came up here to Orange County
to that? So I was still in Rockland.
Oh, you're still in Rockland.
I was still in Rockland getting my master's. But at this point now, fast forward, right? So my master's, I was in school for about 3 years. Okay. That last year, I needed to do an internship.
Oh, okay.
And I had my own apartment at this point. So it was like, so I have to leave my job because now I have to go do an internship at a school, right? So it was then when I moved up to Orange County and shared an apartment with my boyfriend at the time. So thanks to his financial assistance, I was able to finish grad school and still keep 2 other jobs that I had, plus my internship, my full-time internship.
So 2 jobs, internship.
And school in the city. Wow. Yeah, I was living in Orange County and traveling down to Hunter. Wow. Yeah, 3 nights a week on top of the internship, which was, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then the job after school. Yeah. Oh, it really was. It really was a job. But that's when I fell in love with the work around violence against women and girls. I, within a year, was also working at what was then known as Safe Homes of Orange County, where I spent the next 10 years growing within the organization. And I was working with victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, and just really understood everything there is about feminism and intersectionality and how women and girls are just treated differently. And, our jobs as, privileged individuals, how do we bring those voices up? How do we make sure that we make space for those who are needed? And how can we fight? What's our role in this fight, And then 10 years later, and I'm giving this as a real nutshell. Right? A lot happened in between that, right? But this is the journey.
Yeah.
I was offered an incredible opportunity. There was somebody sent me an email saying, Orange County government is hiring for an executive director for Human Rights Commission. I laughed, ignored the email, and then somebody else sent it. And they're like, oh, did you see this? And I'm like, all right, fine, I'll put my resume in there, but it's government. It's please. They're not going to hire me. They already have the person. Mm-hmm. And in December, I got this call from the HR department, and they said to me, please ignore the letter you're about to get in the mail that says we're not interested. We'd like you to come in for an interview.
Wow.
So I was in like their plan B. I was in their maybe. But, 2 interviews later, within 2 hours, I got the call. We would like you to join our team. And that's what got me to this huge role.
Wow.
And in this I've been there 3 years now. And in these last 3 years, I've learned how everything in my life, everything, from my upbringing, where I was born, how I was raised, to the lessons my parents have taught me, the lessons my life has taught me, right? To the work experience, to my master's, so all of it has helped me kind of get to where I am. Not just one thing. It's just, it's the sum of all parts.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, that's so interesting, man. We can go into so many different things, but what was that thing inside of you that gave you that drive to want to try, or want to ask that question, or want to just say, you know what, I need to find out? Like, what was that curiosity in you, and what drove you to break through any type of maybe I should or maybe I shouldn't say or do this?
Yeah. So the first word that comes to mind is fear, right? Fear. It's always being scared of not being good enough, not being this, not being that. Let me show you that I am, right? And it's always that, whether it's showing me that I can, or it's showing the person that told me I can't, it's that challenge of, I can do that. And it's the reminder that I have to do it because I am the only person of color amongst a cohort of 24 department heads, right? If it's not me, who is it going to be?
Gotcha.
If I am not going through my fears, right, and pushing through the concerns of, oh, no, they probably have somebody, then nobody, if we all sit back and say that, then who the heck is going to step up and do it?
Exactly.
We need, we talk so much about needing diversity and people of color and this type of work, but that's a lot of talk, right? So it was always that push of, well, somebody's got to, right? Yeah. I'm too afraid to do it, so that's why I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to, right? I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because I have to believe that the young girls, especially of color, who see me on stage, who hear me talking, and then stay behind and ask something like, is that your natural hair? Yeah. I'm like, that's all you got from that? But okay, yes. Like, wait, that's what you want to ask me, right?
Exactly.
But then they're like, that's so cool that you're up there, and they see somebody that looks like them, right? They see the mirror, and it's like, that's why. That's what pushes me, just being able to represent in a community where we're so underrepresented.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so how has your family, what your family did, and their actions and their perseverance, what of that influences you in what you do today and where your journey? What do you tap into from them? I
tap into survival. I tap into at the age of 7, this 7-year-old, because I think about my daughter, right? Or my son, that 7-year-old probably felt like they were abandoned. They had no answers. That 7-year-old was left, right? Without understanding why, without understanding when, But that 7-year-old survived, right? And came out stronger, right? So I tap into that fight. I tap into that strength, that fear of not knowing, right? And what that turns into. I tap into then being filled with love, because the amount of love I have in my life is incredible, right? I have more love than I can give, you know? I have, again, 4 siblings who are incredibly supportive of everything I do. Everything I do. My mother doesn't stop talking about me, which is embarrassing sometimes. I'm like, Ma, please stop. You know, sometimes I'm in a magazine and she like shows her neighbors and she'll call all the neighbors. You've got to come see this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. But my siblings too, they do the same thing. They're so proud. But that's what fuels me, right? Because I make them proud and I represent my family, but I represent my community. I represent so much. So just survival, but thriving, right? It's more than survival. It's thriving.
Absolutely.
Right? It's knowing that 7-year-old little girl that was probably scared, look at her now.
Yeah.
She'd be so damn proud.
Absolutely.
I want 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 25-year-olds to be like, oh, wait a minute. Not only could I survive, I could thrive.
Yeah.
I could like do things beyond what I ever even dreamed of.
Absolutely. And what was it like for you between the two cultures, right? The culture of the Dominican Republic and then the culture of New York. What was happening in terms of identity for you growing up, probably in high school maybe, or even in grammar school? Like, what was that challenge like, especially language and culture and all that?
Yeah, I've always had this ongoing joke. So when I came to the country, I was supposed to be in 4th grade, but I didn't speak any English. Okay. So I was, and because of the difference in the education system here, I was put back to the 3rd grade. But again, I spoke no English. Okay. So I don't remember a slick of the 3rd grade. Wow. Because it's back like in those days, because in those days, you got 2 periods of ESL. So the entire day you're sitting in front of a teacher who's speaking in English and teaching whatever is taught in 3rd grade. I can't tell you what it is, you know. Don't ask me about fractions if that's what they learned, because I couldn't understand it, right? Wow. But I started learning the language through those 2 ESL periods. And then 4th grade, I remember loving my teacher and her loving me. And I remember there was always a need to feel a part of. And because language was my barrier, I always did go above and beyond to offer help, right? I was the teacher's pet. I wanted to do everything, but it was my way of communicating. It was my way of fitting in, my way of feeling a part of, right? I have 3 of my closest friends I met in 4th grade.
No way.
And we're still friends today.
Wow.
So they always make fun of me, and we still every once in a while laugh at this, because I couldn't pronounce the CH, right? So instead of chocolate, I'd say chocolate.
Oh, okay.
And they'd make fun of me, right? Because, they're American. And I'm like, I want chocolate, right? Or pizza. I want pizza. I couldn't say pizza, right? Oh, okay. But it was that. And I'm a positive person. To me, I'm learning now as I have children, and you're kind of born with some things. Like, I'm just like a glass half full type of person, gotcha. So I would try to make the best out of all possibilities. And that came crashing for me when I came back from New York to DR to go to college, because now I'm 18, right? Completely different world going to college in DR. Completely different.
Because now you're an American too, right? You identify as that.
That's it. That's it. Life, the life there is different. I went in and I'm ready to work, because I've been working, since I was 10. But then as a teenager, I had jobs at the local fairs, at the local, whatever it was. So I get home to DR and I'm like, can I find a job here? And people are going to be like, what do you mean you want to find a job? You're 18. You don't work until you're whatever, and you're a woman. Like, what do you mean? Wow. So it was me, finding someone, and she's like, oh, I work at a school. Do you want a job there? I'm like, yes, please. I need to work because I want to spend my own money. I don't need my dad. I was independent by then, So it was a different culture to get used to. Okay. I'll never forget my first day of school. So I live in a really in a middle class neighborhood in my country. It's very divided when it comes to classes, right? So you've got your very poor or you're extremely rich, right? 85% is extremely poor, and then you're 1% extremely rich, and then there's that in between. That's where my family is hardworking, middle class. so I had this boyfriend was going to the local public college, the one in the country, you know. My dad was able to pay for the private college that costs anybody more money than they can dream of, right? So the most expensive one. And the first day of school, this girl is in my class and we're just making conversation. And she's like, you know, do you have a boyfriend? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, she's like, what major is he studying? And I'm like, oh, actually, I don't know that. And she's like, oh, but he's here, right? And I'm like, no, he goes to so-and-so. And she just like looked at me and she's like, he goes where? And never spoke to me again.
Really?
Because he was too low class for her.
Wow.
So that was like a shocking moment for my new reality and how I had to learn to shift the way I interacted with people based on what they were expecting.
Okay.
So.
Man, that's so interesting.
I know there's so many layers, Ray. So many layers.
And that's what's great about these conversations is to find out the journey and what it takes to break through a lot of these different experiences. Because from what it sounds like, growing up, there was a lot of people that were in your life and out of your life, and that can come with its own challenges of like, wow, and you said it poignantly of I just wanted to feel like I belonged, I fit somewhere. So you know, not to go into the psychology of it, but really it's just like, wow, you know, there's a lot of adversity that you dealt with, which totally makes sense and leads to where you are today in terms of, you know, for the Human Rights Commission of, you know, fighting for people's rights and understanding the law and understanding all those things that go on. What do you see is happening right now, especially like in Orange County? Yeah. What have you been experiencing lately in terms of inclusion and diversity? Because I know you're very well versed in it, and I've learned so much from you in your talks and your cultural competency presentations, which are the best I've ever seen, and I've learned so much in those too of how I'm evolving as well. So what are you seeing of what's going on, you know, I would say locally first and maybe nationally as well, but what do you see is going on in terms of inclusion and diversity? Absolutely. Is there change happening, or is it still kind of the same way it's always been? What do you think? So
change is hard to measure because it's not measurable, right? Yeah. You know, even things like racism and homophobia, right? There aren't numbers to show us, you know, if the scale's tipping in any way. However, the fact that I'm busier than ever, yes, change is happening. You know, my position actually was vacant for 20 years. Wow. 20 years. There was no executive director for the Human Rights Commission before I came in. And my county executive was the one that said, we should, you know, let's do this. You know, the commission was pushing for it. And finally, he's like, absolutely, we're going to fund this. We're going to do it. Let's hire. Let's fill that position. And I've been lucky because I've got to make what I want of this position. And I appreciate your question because what I'm seeing is all anecdotal. I will tell you what I'm seeing, right? But it's because it's where I'm at. It's because of the spaces I put myself in, right? So what I'm seeing is a lack of diverse people in high places. What I am seeing is a lack of understanding of the experience of oppressed communities. What I'm seeing is people with a lot of privilege and positions of power and influence that don't realize how much power and influence they have to become allies to those communities, to help those communities. So I am purposefully putting myself in really uncomfortable positions where I am the only Latina, where I'm the only person of color, where I'm the only person that looks or talks like I do, so that I can almost infiltrate, right? And help that community understand the experience of this community, because we're hurting, Ray. Yeah. We are hurting on both sides, you know. So a lot of what I do is I get to go out and do presentations and workshops on topics like diversity and inclusion, right? And topics like racism. I spent hours talking to people about the history of racism. How did we get to where we are? How racism still lives and fosters within systems, and how we as individuals can fight that. What can we do on a daily basis to fight, you know, the nastiness of racism? But what I'm seeing is people just not being able to tap into their resources or their voice, right? Because their voice is their resource,
Absolutely.
right? And if it's a person who is, let's say running a meeting, it's me helping them remember that there are people within this room that fit into one of those categories of those oppressed communities, whether it's the LGBTQ community, whether, it's a different religion, that you have the power to lift that voice,
Exactly.
right? And what does that mean? You shut your voice so that voice can come up. That's it, So I'm seeing a lot of interest in that conversation. And I think that's not happening just locally, right? But we are actually modeling the need that's happening nationally.
Absolutely.
Fortune 500 companies were the ones who really started this movement of, diversity and inclusion, because they realize that having diverse staff means they'll make more money. They realize that, wait a minute, if my staff can come into work feeling like they can be their whole selves, they'll be more productive. They'll be better company morale. They'll make me more money. Oh, what a genius concept,
Exactly.
I mean, think about it. I in my office now, I always have either salsa or bachata or merengue playing. That's new to me. That is so new to me. I can think of times where I was in other offices where I would be playing, WHUD because it was a accepted music, etc. Unless it was just me in my office, or unless it was someone, I was sharing a space with someone like me.
Gotcha.
Right? That grew up in the Bronx, or that was Latino and didn't mind it, right? But that's where I get into my zone. When I have my music and I'm singing along to these, as we call them, well, I won't say that because it's a triggering term, but these like heartfelt songs, that's when I get in my zone. That's when I can work harder and produce better. And we need to start doing that. But folks who don't have that experience, how are we expecting them to know that? They don't know that people of color may not necessarily feel comfortable /safe /able to bring their whole selves in, right? So we need to start bridging those gaps. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to bridge those gaps by bringing those conversations to the table.
Yeah, and you do that so well, because the cultural competency presentation I've seen you do is just, you make it so palatable for everyone. And, when you're talking about privilege or, the lack of inclusion, the lack of this or the lack of that, there are tensions that come up on all sorts of sides. And I've seen it happen in a bad way, and I've seen it done in your way in such a positive way, for people could come out of the presentation saying, okay, I hear it.
And that's it.
And I would say, talk about change takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But when you're planting seeds like that, there is an opportunity to be able to grow something, and it needs more growth. You got to put more water in it.
Water it every once in a while.
Exactly. It's going to rain. It's going to be snow.
Yeah.
But so what kind of things drive you to want to continue to pursue this kind of career? And I know it's not all of your life or what it is, but what continues to drive you toward that direction of keeping people aware and awake or woke or whatever? Like what drives you for that?
Ooh, other than the need for it, I work on a calendar year basis.
Okay.
I'm really energized because it's February
now,
right? Ask me that question in October and I'm burnt out. Last year was a rough one because by the end of the year, by November, I'm just burnt out completely. And I'm talking to my therapist and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. So in my husband, I have this incredible partner and resource because I'm able to come to him and like have these conversations. So he knows when like my burnt out period is coming or when I'm really focused and driven and just moving, so what drives me is other people. And this you'll hear me say when you ask me later about wellness. It's other people. Other people to me is just, that's my gas. That's what keeps me going. That's like my gasoline that fuels me. So every single time I leave a room after an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 hour presentation and one person writes me an email or a message, and I've got one after the other, that I can share about how they've been impacted, how they are, I've been told you changed my life. Someone once said to me, you touched my soul, right?
Whoa.
And I was like, oh, you're so full of crap.
Yeah.
But like, what?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you don't understand. You touched my soul. And here is this very privileged white man who I was having almost like a debate with, right? Because he was like, this doesn't happen. We're in New York. What do you mean there's homophobia and racism? What do you mean? But when I'm able to create a space where people, because it's not just my experiences, I can't represent all the isms, right? Where people feel comfortable and safe saying, oh, actually, let me tell you what has happened to me as a person in a wheelchair, or let me tell you what has happened to me as a brown woman in this county where I was kicked out of a restaurant for no reason other than the fact that I'm brown. When you create that space where people can say those things, the people who don't know what it's like to be in those places are like, oh, is that what you mean? And that debate and that discomfort goes from a really uncomfortable defensiveness to a discomfort around pain and emotion for somebody else's experience, right? Yeah. And that's when growth happens. So when I get that feedback, or the young women who, when I do chats at high schools or even colleges, who say to me things like, I want to do what you're doing. How did you get there? I'm touched, right? Yeah. Because that's the only reason. I don't do this for me. I don't, I do it for them. I do it for whoever them is. And before I do a speech or a presentation, my mother has always taught me, you se lo dejas a Dios. You leave it to God. You just ask God to you do what you got to do. Yeah. I'm going to do the talking, but you do what you got to do with it. Yeah. And that's what I do. I was like, my nerves, just whatever. This isn't me. This isn't for me, right? Exactly. I'm saying whatever comes to my heart, whatever comes to my mind, which has gotten me in trouble a few times. Okay. Because sometimes what is in my heart, guess what?
It comes out.
It comes out, and some people don't like it, and it makes people uncomfortable, and it makes people look at themselves in the mirror and think, oh, wait a minute, I've done that, but that wasn't that bad. That wasn't my intention. But guess what? The impact, it was real. So it's for other people. That's what fuels me.
And so what has your development of becoming a leader, just not so much just in your job, but a leader in your household with your children and your husband and being that wife, and what does leadership mean to you, and what have you done to cultivate your leadership qualities?
I've had a lot of growing pains cultivating my leadership qualities. I've been a leader since I was really young. And at a young age, I thought leadership was power. Flat out. I thought leadership was being in charge and delegating and telling people what to do, and go do this, and I get to sit and watch. I've done a lot of learning, right?
I've been there too.
Right. We all have. And I still have so much more to learn, right?
But you do it so well. So what are some of the things you've learned?
So I've learned that it's negotiating. I've learned, you talk about being a leader at home. And the person I am at home is a little different than the person I am at work, right? Because I think naturally for all of us, we wear different masks, and we need to own the fact that we have to wear masks differently where we go. That's part of self-care, right? But I've learned that I am learning every single day how to give and take, how me doing everything doesn't equal success, or doesn't equal getting it right, or doesn't equal well-being, or doesn't, no, me doing everything equals burnout, equals my partner not feeling like a partner, feeling like, oh wait, you're doing it all. You're not asking for help or letting me help you. You're not, right? It also means I'm not modeling for my children what I should be modeling, which is, this is a two-person household where the two of us kind of do this together, and the four of us make this household, right? But I've learned the art of being okay with making mistakes. That is hard for me because my immediate response is get defensive and wanting to defend myself, but this is not what I was trying to do, or insecure. Like, damn it, I can't believe I did that. Or, man, I can't believe, right? But it's understanding that there's going to be growth, right? And that doesn't come immediately, right? There's first the feelings. Yeah. Whatever feelings, whatever mess up I had, because they all bring different types of feelings, right? Whatever it is, I first sit in those emotions. They're all over me and they're nasty, right? But there comes a point where I have to decide, make the intentional decision to get out of it. Yeah. How am I going to fix this? Right? What do I do to go fix it and make sure it either doesn't happen again, or that I do whatever I need to do to make, and I think that's what leadership is about. It's about understanding that we use each other as resources, that we have people around us, but that we're not perfect. Sure. In no way are we perfect, or we shouldn't expect perfection from others either if we don't expect them from ourselves. So understanding that mistakes are okay, as long as you're learning from them, as long as there's intentionality behind what you do with them. I try to take that away in everything I do in life.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so important for you to point those things out, that it's a continual learning process,
Yeah.
even for leaders that you know might have been leaders for 20, 30 years.
That's right.
You know, the greatest leaders are the ones that I believe are the ones that share their experience and deliver it to others so that they can grow, you know, and you're doing that with your children, you're doing that with, you know, with the marriage, with, you know, your position. And it's, you know, and that's no wonder why people want you on their team, you know, and that's such a great thing. So this kind of leads into the, you know, the health and wellness side of things of the My Formula Way, where we talk about physical health, we talk about mental health, spiritual health, and emotional health. And the first component is about physical health and exercise and nutrition, and knowing what that does for you, knowing how important that is for each one of us to, you know, stay alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just talk a little bit about your journey in terms of exercise and nutrition and those relationships with those activities in your life, and you know, the ups and downs, the ins and outs, whatever you've gone through. What does that mean to you in terms of strengthening your body and physical health?
So I've learned a lot about what breathing does for me. I've tried exercising. I've tried the gym. At one point, I was part of a donation program with the gym for a year. Because let's be honest, it wasn't a membership.
I never heard that before.
It was a donation program. I was helping the owners of that gym. You know, I like to give back to my community, right? In all ways possible.
Exactly.
But when it comes to physical exercise, it doesn't, you know, I take the stairs. I like to park far away. That's as much physical as you're going to get.
Okay.
Except in dancing. I try to dance now at least once a month.
And you're an amazing dancer.
Thank you.
I've experienced that myself.
Well, you're a little biased because we dance very well together. No, but I try to dance. I try to dance, you know, and that's a new thing for me in the last, I'd say, 2 years or so, because I find dancing is liberating. And actually, it was a mutual friend of the two of us. Shout out to Dakora.
Yeah.
Who actually one time said to me last year, he's like, "Are you coming to this party? You know, me and DJ H2O." And I'm like, "No, I don't have anybody to go with." And he's like, "I'm sorry, you need somebody to go with?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a dance party." He's like, "You didn't hear the question. You need somebody to go with?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe not." So I show up to this party and I haven't stopped showing up since and just dance.
Yeah.
And it is liberating to just dance by yourself, right? Growing up, and, you know, not growing up, but being young, I would, you know, laugh at the people like, "Oh my gosh, look at her dancing by herself. Is she crazy?" Right? Like, what does she do? Now I'm just like, yes, take it, and I don't care.
Now you're like, "Oh, wow, she had the answer."
Yes, she did. She figured it out way before. And if I would have just listened, it would have saved me 20 years of not dancing. So that's how I let myself loose. Free, absolutely. Dancing till my feet hurt so much that the only way to get through that pain is dancing more, you know? It's that nonstop, which is why I actually also love Zumba.
Yeah.
I don't do it enough, but Zumba to me is liberating because it's dancing.
Excellent.
You know, and they hide the exercise.
Yeah.
They're tricking
It's
us.
underneath,
It's underneath because it's dancing. But, and then during the day, I remind myself to breathe. Right? So that to me is how I connect physically with myself when, you know, I have anxiety. And when I feel my anxiety kicking up, which is often when I'm stressed, when I have a lot of things going on, both at home and at work, because, you know, I'm a parent. Did you hear that part of two small children?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm a wife and I'm a daughter, by the way, with two aging parents with mental illness. And I'm a sibling. So I'm a whole lot of things, which is exhausting. Exhausting. So I breathe. I try breathing a lot. Sometimes that's, I have this awesome friend named Ray who put me on to meditation. So I downloaded apps that, you know, I'll start with a little breathing here and there, and they just center me so that I can kind of focus on whatever task I need to do.
Gotcha.
That's my physical. That's, you know, whatever it looks like at whatever point, but physical to me is also my physical well-being is also intimacy with my partner. Whether that's my husband needs to hold my hand sometimes, whether that's I'm doing the dishes and I need him to pat my back. Oh, you know, right? Pat anywhere.
Exactly.
So I can feel that connection.
Gotcha.
I love hugs. You know, to me, that intimate connection with friends or people you love when you need that is liberating.
Absolutely. Sure. And in terms of nutrition, you know, what are the types of things that you try to what some of the goals that you tried to achieve
Yeah.
in terms of nutrition. Nobody's perfect. I know
No,
I'm
of
not.
course, no.
But what are some of the things you try to incorporate into your life?
I've had, I don't want to say battle with my weight because it's not a battle. I've challenged my weight. In the last
push
10
it
years.
sometimes.
I push it sometimes,
Exactly.
right? I'm a
get
big
you.
fan of Weight Watchers. Actually, it's always worked wonders for me. So
Okay.
I've learned that I go through every 2 years or so, I lose weight. And by weight, I mean 10 to 15 pounds,
Okay.
where my comfort level is, And then within 2 years, it's back up and I got to lose them again.
Gotcha.
And that's because I find comfort in food, like so many of us do, right? I can't even say it's culturally because let's be honest, it's the human culture to find comfort
There's
in
dopamine
food.
in it. There's dopamine in
Right,
food. It gives you that
there's
rush.
right. So I eat when I'm stressed. So when I am not stressed, I have to remind myself to make better choices, right? So I've incorporated things like during lunch, I won't have heavy meals. Like I'll just stick to salads, right? It took me years to love a salad. Now I crave salads for lunch, right? Every once in a while I won't, but like we all do. Another big thing that I did in my life 10 years ago, actually, because it was when I was pregnant with my son, is I stopped drinking soda as much as I used to. It was doing things to my body that I had no idea it was. I would drink 3 or 4 Pepsis a day. Like with breakfast, I'd have, like a bottle of Pepsi because that was my thing, like the best thing in the world in the Bronx is a bacon, egg, and cheese and a Pepsi. For breakfast. It's the best,
Man.
on your
Well,
walk
let's cut
to
that
the
out as much as we can.
Yes,
Just maybe
please.
once a month.
Maybe once a month. So now I'll only have it if it has a little Bacardi in it. Which means I can only have it when I'm out social and I'll
exactly.
only have 1 or 2 drinks because I hate what that does to my body.
Exactly.
So making decisions sometimes and also teaching my children that too. Like we are intentional when we talk about we're going to Wendy's because, Wendy's is better than McDonald's because McDonald's, that's what we say, right? It's still bad food, but we'll have it once a month. And we talk about intentionally in front of the kids how, because, they have a friend who has McDonald's like 4 nights a week for dinner. And they're like, why can't we do that? Because it's not healthy, right?
Exactly.
Make sure there are greens on your plate. We do things like at least 4 nights out of the 6 or 7 nights, right, of the week, we have them together. Like dinner in my house is like, we have the 4 of us sit down. Either me or my husband will make dinner, so it's not just something, quick. There's definitely plenty of nights where we have to do that.
Of course,
But bonding over that meal and making sure that we talk about better choices.
Excellent.
Right? So if you're going to have ketchup with those, not so much ketchup. Did you know that Did you know there's just as much sugar in whatever tablespoon of ketchup as there is in a whole donut?
Oh, yeah.
When I saw that, I'm like, my kids are having half of that, right? You can still have some ketchup because, you're 9 and 6. And I think that's like the thing to do when you're a kid, but not as much anymore. So making those decisions intentionally has helped us kind of get to wherever we are trying to get to.
Yeah, and that's the key. It's the journey of it. It's the journey of getting to a place of what are the good choices? What are they? And for your children to see, okay, you can have these other things every now and then, but if you have it all the time, it's not going to benefit you, and your output is going to be so much affected on whatever you do. So and it's great because it ties into what you said before, the breathing, ties into the mental health and the mental health side of things and what I call peace in the mind. And everybody's mental health is different, and what people go through in their mental health is different. Practicing meditation, mindfulness, and peace in that mind. We also talk about sleep and how important sleep is. What is your journey of mental health and in cultivating good mental health in your life? How have you gotten to a place where you are able to work through your anxiety, like you mentioned before, to get to a place of peace? Like, what's that journey been like for you?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a journey. It continues to be a journey. Like I shared earlier, I have, for 11 years, really, I worked with victims of violence, right? My youngest victim of sexual assault was a 7-year-old.
Wow.
So I've had to learn self-care without knowing the words self-care from the beginning.
Okay.
I'll never forget when I first started working for Rape Crisis, I'd always come home to my boyfriend, right? my husband now, and I would just dump. I'm a dumper. That's what I call myself. I just have to spit it out. Blah, blah, blah. And then once it's on you, I'm good.
I'm good. It's out of me.
I'm good. It's out of me. You deal with it, you know? And one day he said to me, and I'll never forget the case because it was pretty horrifying. And he's like, stop. And this is like, 3 a.m, like middle of the night type of thing. I'd wake him up because my shifts were, 24 hours, whatever. And I'd have to dump because I was traumatized, right? Vicarious trauma is such a real thing. Yeah. And he's like, I didn't, that's not my job. I work at a bank. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't know what you mean. I'm telling you about my job. I know that's not you. He's like, no, you don't get it. I can't hear those things. Find something else to do it, right? Wow. So in my journey, I have discovered that I need to dump appropriately. I can't dump it on other people because then I'm just hurting other people. Wow. Right? So I've learned to find mentors. I've learned to find the right type of supervision, to demand the right type of supervision and ask for what I need. Yeah. I've learned to go to therapy because if that's what will help me and that's what I need to be a good person and a whole, complete person, then that's what I'll need to do. Absolutely. I've also learned to cut things out that don't work for me. I don't watch movies or shows that are violent. I can't tolerate them.
Because those images and
the
stuff and the information. Yeah.
Because in the end, I don't need to watch it or even read it. Yeah. I've seen it.
You've seen it.
I've worked with, I've held the hands of women who have almost been killed by their partners. So I don't need those images of the fakeness because that's real life for someone. Sure. So I can't tolerate those things. So I keep myself out of them. Social media is another really good way of my self-care. I stay out of. So I'm present in social media when it comes to, I have accounts. I sometimes post pictures, but I don't engage. I don't engage in negativity. I don't engage in, people who post things that are, too political or too this or too, I shut them out. Literally, I delete them. Yeah. Or I unfollow them if they're a family member and I have to keep them on because, they'll call me on it if I delete them. Yeah. So I know my limitations. Yeah. I've learned my limitations. And then I read. I do a lot of reading. I love reading. Holy smokes, Ray. I have so much to thank you for. 2 years ago, you were at a presentation. We're at one of your, and one of the things, my formula, you told us, get your cell phones out or write down, take a note. And it was set a goal for yourself, right? Oh. Something simple that you can, I don't remember how you say it, but you know what I'm talking about when you say get a goal for your mental wellness, sure. Right? My goal was to read a book because I missed reading. After I had children, I don't have time for reading. With kids, you don't have time for much, right?
Plus the job and everything else, yeah.
Exactly, right. But at this point, my children were old enough where now I have some time, right? And you said, read a book. Or you said, do something you like. And on my phone, I wrote, read one book. And now I'm reading a little bit over 100 books a year.
What?
Yes, because now I have this app and it tracks it. And it's awesome because I love it so much, It's also an escape for me. It's also when I have a rough time, a rough day, I go to my book, which could also be unhealthy, by the way. Yeah. Because sometimes I do that to not think.
Gotcha.
Instead of processing, I numb by reading.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So I'm working through that too. Like, I have to sit in my emotions so I can process them and I can feel them and I can think about why and understand the where so that I can then work on them. Absolutely. So there's a lot of things, but and then love, surrounding myself with my loved ones is really, to me, the biggest thing I can do.
That's awesome, man. And just the fact that you're able to find places where you can have that peace of mind is just so important. And everybody's is different, and the fact that you tapped into meditation, but that reading is really, that's where you're finding that peace. Yeah. And that's just so important. So, and in terms of sleep, like how have you been able to work on maybe sleep patterns or things like that? What is your sleep like?
Oh, yeah, no. I need between 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night or I won't function well.
That's excellent. Yeah.
I absolutely need it.
And that's really good. That's a really good thing. A lot of people push that down.
Oh, no,
no. That's very good to sleep.
Sleeping is absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. Recharge.
Oh, yes. And it needs to be consistent for me because I know what it does to my body and what it does to my personality. And by the way, what it does to my mood and my household. Yes. When I'm in a bad mood, my entire household is in a bad mood. I bark. They're going to feel it. And it doesn't feel good because then you have all this guilt. And then I'm even more angry because now I'm guilty. Yeah.
And we all go through it.
We do. So it's being proactive about making sure that I'm going to get what I need. And sometimes that involves, my husband and I take turns, right? So on the weekends, my kids have all sorts of sports,
Yeah,
etc. You
sure.
know, so like Sunday mornings, you know, we have 9 to 12 or whatever it is in Middletown, so we have to be up early. So my husband and I take turns so that, you know, it's not just one parent every Sunday morning waking up extra early.
Wow,
Or
yeah.
like tonight I'm going out tonight. So guess what? He's doing tomorrow morning so that I get to sleep in a little bit more tomorrow because he knows that it's for the health of the household.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not just for your, you know.
This is really for me.
It's
too.
really for me, you know,
Exactly.
but it works for me. So, I personally prioritize that. But I'm also really lucky because my husband, from when my kids were babies, like I could sleep through the night because he doesn't.
Yeah.
When the babies are crying, he's the one that would get up. So, because he knows I need my sleep.
You need to sleep. And
Daytime,
then,
I got it all.
yeah, and you'll
I've
have
got
it,
my
you'll
cape on.
You'll run.
I
Yeah.
will run. But when it comes to nighttime,
Yeah.
I need to sleep through the entire night
That's
to
great.
be able to get through. So we found what works for us.
Yeah, and that's just it's great that you put that message out there, you know,
Yeah.
because you know, and some people can really function on 4 or 5 hours.
Absolutely.
Of sleep. And I've seen it for you know some people.
So have
can do
I.
that,
It's
but-
actually impressive.
Yeah,
I don't know
but
how
not
they do
me.
it, but no,
Yeah,
not me.
7
either.
to 8 hours of sleep for me. It keeps keeps my mood balanced. It keeps me being able to
Yeah.
achieve the things that I want to achieve. Again, output.
Absolutely.
I'm optimal when I have really good sleep.
Absolutely.
And you know, like I talk to a lot of people and coach people. It's very good to keep consistent sleep patterns. So that means going to sleep around the same time and waking up around the same time because it's that circadian rhythm that you know. I know you studied psychology. And you understand about that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how you've been able to bring your education of psychology into all the things that you do because I think that's just so important to realize. And then, you know, it leads into freedom in the spirit, which is spiritual health. And, you know, spirit to me is just, you know, what's cultivating inside of you, your creativity, your nature, the way you express yourself so that you can believe that, hey, I'm here for a reason. So what inspires you on a day-to-day basis throughout your life? Maybe what you know your growing up was like, or your family life, or even now what inspires you. What's that inspirational journey been for you?
Yeah, so it's always been believing in something larger than you, right? Bigger than you, something, you know, we call him or her God. And it's always, for us, it's never been religion. My parents were just never religious people, but we've always believed that there's someone out there, right? Again, a God. So we pray and we ask and we, you know, I believe like everything happens for a reason, and it's because I'm supposed to be there. So I missed this yesterday. I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't, that's not what God's plan was, you know? And as I teach my children to believe in something as well, without the policies and rules and discipline of religion, which is really challenging, right? Because to me, all of that's interpreted by humans and people, right? With their own interest. It's what has always fueled me because that's what I was raised with. You know, I have a very spiritual mom, especially who, you know, constantly tells me, make sure you thank God for everything you have. Make sure, you know, so yes, I've worked hard. Yes, you know, but everything I have is not because I'm pretty. I mean, I'm pretty. I've got that down, but I didn't just wake up and work harder than the other person. No, we probably worked just as hard, but somehow I got this hand and that person got that other hand.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose in that. I don't know what my purpose is, and I will spend the rest of my life serving that purpose. I don't need to know what it is because I may have already touched a life somewhere that I'll never know about. And
Incredible.
And I'm okay with that because in the end, it's not about me. It's about what God wants me to do through other people, right?
Yeah.
I'm just a vessel and I'm just like going around in my life, but making sure I'm thankful for what I do have because I know that any day, man, right, it can shatter.
Yeah.
Any day, just like this, I can lose someone, I can lose something, I can lose everything within seconds. Yeah. But I have to hold on to this now, this gratitude I have, because if God wants me to be this blessed and this happy and this lucky and all this, then maybe he needs me to have that pain too, to appreciate whatever it is I need to appreciate. Wow. So to me, holding on to that feeling will help me get through whatever hard moment is coming. That loss that will come, because it's going to come, right? It's going to come. I have to believe that it's happening for a reason, but that I'm going to be prepared for it or get through it. And it's going to suck because it's going to suck.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Yeah.
But there's a purpose for it. I'll never know what the purpose is, but I believe in that. I believe that it's for a reason that we'll never know, and I don't even question the reason.
Yeah.
But that's because I believe that spiritually we're here for because that's what he wants us to do.
Yeah.
So.
And how does that belief fuel possibly your creativity or expressing? Because
Yeah.
your expression now, what you said is dancing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you've always danced, but how does that belief fuel your creativity, your creative part of you?
So I think that the only creative bone I have in me, because let me tell you.
Oh, you got a lot of it.
Really.
Your creation of the presentations are amazing. So,
and that's the only creative anything that I have is it's my ability to speak to people and to touch people, right?
Gotcha. That's your creative side.
That's my creative side.
I gotcha.
I feel like I have a gift, and that is to be able to have a conversation with someone around a really difficult topic. And not everyone, because I can't get, not everybody likes me. You either love me or you hate me, right? Most love, but some hate.
Love you, and I love
some
you.
really, really, can't handle all of this because I am so much energy. But I think that's what like I shared earlier, I literally start I get into my mind and I close my eyes for a second. It takes no more than a second, and I leave it to him, and I just say, "What you do what you got to do," and I'm fueled by that, because when I'm talking, I'm just talking. It just comes natural. It just comes out of me. I'm not thinking. I'm not planning. I'm not strategizing. I actually had the incredible privilege of doing a TEDx talk, which was really, really an amazing experience that I'll never have to thank God, do again.
You were amazing.
Thank you, Ray. But I didn't think so. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that we are our worst enemies when it comes to being hard on ourselves. I had to learn a speech. I had to learn my script because it's very, structured.
Yeah.
You get this amount of time. You have to, everything has to be memorized, and you have to practice and rehearse. I don't do well with that.
Yeah, because you flow.
I flow.
Yeah.
I just speak, and which could be a blessing or a curse depending on where we're talking. So that was hard for me because I was on a stage, which I'm super comfortable in and don't mind at all. But I was nervous because I had to memorize words, and I wrote the words, right? But there was all this pressure around what I wrote and what I said, and my creativity comes from the moment. It comes from the people, the energy around me. It comes from the experience I had that day, the experience I had that moment. That's where my spiritual creativity kind of feeds from. So when you give me a script, I gotta memorize it and then regurgitate it. It's like, this is what you get.
Yeah.
And now it lives in the world of the internet.
Yeah. I'm glad it's in the world of the internet because it's a great video to watch, and you have to pick it up on YouTube because it is a TEDx talk that you did that is just so important for a lot of reasons. Yeah. And the vegetable, the soup. The soup. I'll just leave it there. Check out the section where it comes about the soup.
Go to YouTube, look up my name, and learn about soup.
Absolutely, learn about soup, and it's so. The way you structured that was just so amazing. I'm grateful to see that and hear it. And it kind of leads into the last part of the My Formula Way, which is about emotional health. And emotional health, I've always tied it into loving yourself and doing acts of kindness and sharing your experiences so that you can build these trusting relationships. And it shows that you've built many trusting relationships along your path, along your journey, especially now with your family and your children and the community. And a lot of people trust you because you're a trustworthy person. How have you put that together in terms of loving yourself and then being able to share that?
I don't know. It just came.
It
just happened.
Yeah.
Well, first to loving myself. My God, I can't love myself more. I mean, maybe I could. I don't know. But as hard as I am on myself, I think I don't talk down to myself. I don't, I have extreme high expectations of what I can do because I know I can. Earlier I talked about fear drives me. It's not even fear of failure. It's fear of not doing the best that I could because I know I can, right? Which is the TED Talk thing. Like, damn it, I could have done better. I know it was good, but it could have been excellent.
It was great.
It was all right.
No, it was great.
No, it was good. It was good.
It's great.
Fine. We'll agree to disagree.
All right. Remember, acceptance.
Yes, acceptance. Yes, acceptance. But I believe that when someone's able to love themselves, then you are open to loving others. And how can I love my children as much as I love them if I can't love myself that much first? You know, I can't. I have so much. My heart is like probably, I don't know, the size of your fist is supposed to be, right? I call BS on that because the amount of love I can carry in my heart is so overwhelming sometimes that I feel like it must be in my entire body as an organ, you know? And that, I think, exudes trustworthiness and loyalty and all of that stuff, right? I'm not the best friend, right? When my friends hear this, is going to be like, I call BS on that. You don't call me back. You know, I haven't seen you in 7 months. Like, what the heck? Yeah. But I have so much around me that I need to be able to almost like break myself up around so many people. It is all about building relationships. Yeah. When you said the whole thing with building relationships, that's the story of my life every single day, because even the work that I do with talking about how to create inclusive spaces is about building relationships, right? Creating an inclusive space where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their race, their gender, their ability, their sexuality, their sexual orientation, their whatever. It's about getting to know someone as a human and connecting with that person and in your similarities and your differences. Exactly. It's about building relationships, right? And that's not an easy thing to do when you don't have a lot in common at first sight. Yeah. But the second you start having a conversation, it's like, oh, wait a minute, me too, right? And then things kind of just start happening. So that's how I kind of live life around building relationships. To me, relationships can come and go. They serve a purpose during a specific time of your life. You know, I am extremely lucky to have a handful of friends that I can call friends that I've known for some of them 30 years. Yeah,
because you said since 4th grade. That's crazy. Yeah, that's amazing.
Some of them I met in college. Some of them I met, you know, and some of them were incredibly useful for me and for that person, right, during that part of our lives. And then we grew. And then we just moved on, right? And that's okay.
And it served its purpose.
Like it served its purpose there. And we should be okay with that. I think that's also part of what I've had to do in life, learn how to make and lose friends because of the moves that I've had, which have been big, right? My childhood friends, I don't remember them because I was 6 and 7 and I had to leave, right? And then my high school friends, guess what? I left. Right? I couldn't keep up with a lot of them because I went to college in DR. My college friends from DR, guess what? I left there too. Right. Wow. So I've learned to be grateful for the time I've had with those people and the change they made in my life because we built those relationships together. Yeah. I wasn't perfect, right? I tried being good. I did a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have had done or, you know, but we grew and built more relationships around what we learned from that last relationship. Absolutely. So people to me and connecting with people and developing whatever that friendship could look like, that relationship, I think just that's what fuels me. That's what keeps me going. Yeah. Connecting with people.
Yeah. And that's so important to tap into of the connection and knowing how to stay in relationship and let go. Yeah. That's a challenge, you know, that's a challenge for many people. And then knowing when that letting go needs to happen for the benefit of not only you, not only the other person, but of the relationship, right? Because a lot of times it's really hard to do and it's really hard to know when that time is. But I think the more you build relationship with other people, because some people might get isolated and say, you know what, I've been screwed in the back so many times, I don't want to continue with these relationships, which happens. Yeah, and I've been screwed many times in my life, but I continue. Absolutely. And my wife continuously helps me to understand of being careful of who I surround myself with. Yeah. People, places, and things for me. Yeah. But it's really knowing how to cultivate it, how to know when to step back and let go, and how to be grateful for it, whether it was good or bad. Agreed. You know, the gratitude of that is so huge, and you touched upon that so well in terms of your going back and forth and really not having regrets. It's like, well, that was my journey. That was my lesson. That was what I learned.
That was it.
Which is so awesome.
And it's easy for me to say that, but I know for a fact that some of the people I did leave behind were left hurting. Sure. You know, I have friends who felt like, but you just abandoned me. Like you just left. They don't realize, and you know, I wasn't in a position to even know that that's what my process was. That no, I'm just used to that. Like my goodbye, I was really saying goodbye. Like I didn't mean to like let you think I was going to stay in touch because that's just, I don't do that, you know? Yeah. But that hurt people that like, you know, because they were expecting and wanting more. But in conversations, it's like, but I'm so grateful for the years we had together and just I'm grateful for what we've had, but it is difficult to know when to let go. Some things you hold on to, some people you hold on to,
Sure.
because you almost confuse that love or that feeling you had for that person as being healthy when it was really unhealthy, or when the purpose it serves is over and you have to move on. That's a hard process.
Sure. And I think it boils down to gratitude, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, gratitude is everything. And my gratitude for you being on this show and being with me for this time is beyond belief. And I'm so honored again. And thank you for expressing yourself, for going on to this journey and explaining your journey so that others can benefit from it, because that's your give and that's your gift as well. And so, you are with the Human Rights Commission. Is there anything that people can follow or look into or tap into the community that you may want to let them know about?
So you can go through the Orange County government website, right? So orangecountygov.com, or just Google Orange County government, because I am part of our local government.
Sure.
And I am available for presentations. I'm available for workshops. I'm available for consulting. I do a lot of consulting around agencies and businesses and nonprofits, helping them become inclusive, helping them create policies or access resources that are available to kind of help their staff.
Sure.
So absolutely, anybody can reach me through there, or just to touch, sometimes people want to touch base.
Yeah.
I believe in mentoring moments, not necessarily mentors. I've had moments with young people who are looking to get into the work, or who are looking to get into any type of work related to social justice, etc., where they just want to have coffee with me. And they're like, we have coffee. And, a couple times I've been asked, can you be my mentor? And I'm like, I don't have time for that. But what I do have time for is mentoring moments. It's, let's go have coffee and I will tell you my entire story, and take notes if you want, or let's meet a couple times and learn from each other. And I'll share what happened here and what happened there and how hard that was for me and what I got out of it. And what you take of those moments, take them and make them grow. Those are the seeds I'm planting out there. Exactly. Just take those tiny little tidbits that we all leave and pick them up, because none of the stuff I say, Ray, is mine or my own.
Yeah.
I've incurred it from my years, from the people who have touched my life, from the people who I've learned from and mentored me, the people who have pissed me off, the people who have given me love, and the ones who've given me hate. That's all. Me talking is all them.
Yeah, exactly.
This is everything I've gotten is from others.
Yeah.
I just spit it back out.
That's awesome.
Including you. So thank you for creating this space, Ray.
I'm
Thank
honored.
you, because it is quite a special space.
Thank you so
that
much,
very
man.
much.
Thank you. And we'll be having lunch and dancing on the dance floor. And
Yes, we
doing all that
will.
stuff. So thank you for being my friend, and I
Yes.
really appreciate you.
Me too.
Take care.
Me
Thank
too.
you. Peace.